he said politely. Titan smirked, handing his phone to a nearby fan. Record this from the side, he instructed before approaching the bar. He leapt up with athletic ease, gripping the metal with hands like vices. Then, playing to his audience, he began cranking out pull-ups with theatrical exhalation's perfect form. Explosive power. Each repetition punctuated with a slight growl for effect. 1, 2, 3. The crowd began counting, caught up in the spectacle, despite themselves. Titan reached 15 without slowing, his massive biceps bulging, veins prominent under his skin. At 20, he was still going strong, though his breathing had grown heavier. By 30, sweat poured down his face, but his form remained solid. This was, after all, his domain. At 42, he finally dropped from the bar, landing heavily, but immediately striking a pose. Arms flexed upward in triumph. The crowd responded with appropriate awe, several whoops and cheers rising above the general murmur. 42 unbroken pull-ups, Jocks announced to the live stream. Camera panning from Titan's heaving but victorious form to Chuck's still calm face. Beat that, Walker, Texas Ranger. Titan, breathing hard but grinning wide, stepped aside with a theatrical bow. All yours, legend. Let's see what Hollywood's got. Chuck nodded in acknowledgement of the performance. It had been impressive. The young man clearly had real strength beneath the showmanship. He stepped forward and reached up for the bar, his movements smooth despite his age. The crowd watched, some with anticipation, others with discomfort. As Chuck hung suspended, seeming almost small compared to Titan's imposing frame, for a moment he simply hung there, eyes closed, breathing steady. Having trouble starting, Titan called out, earning nervous laughs. Chuck opened his eyes and began to pull himself up. The movement was fluid, controlled, no explosive jerks, no theatrical grunts, just steady, deliberate motion. Up, pause at the top, down, up, pause, down. The crowd began counting again. But there was something different about Chuck's pull-ups that soon became apparent to everyone watching. Each one was identical, perfect form, same timing, same controlled breathing pattern. By 15, while the count continued, whispers had begun. Look at how steady he is. Has he even sped up or slowed down once? It's like watching a machine. At 30, Titan's smirk had faded slightly. Chuck's breathing remained measured, his form unchanged. At 40, the whispers grew louder. At 50, the counting became more enthusiastic. The crowd now fully invested in this unexpected development. At 60, Chuck paused at the top of the movement, held for a 3-out, and then lowered himself with the same control he'd maintained throughout. He released the bar and landed lightly on his feet, showing none of the strain or theatrics Titan had displayed. For a moment, the gym was completely silent. Then someone in the back began to clap, and suddenly the space filled with applause. Not the rowdy cheers Titan usually received, but something closer to genuine respect. Titan's face had hardened, his earlier confidence cracking visibly. "Lucky day for you," he said, voice tight, "but pull-ups are basic. Try something that requires real mass next time." Chuck merely nodded, accepting a towel someone offered him. "You've got impressive strength," he said to Titan. Genuine, rather than condescending. Good form, too. The simple compliment freely given when mockery would have been easy seemed to unsettle Titan more than any insult could have. Before he could respond, Jocks thrust the camera closer to Chuck. "That was insane. How many could you have done?" Chuck shrugged slightly. "Numbers aren't really the point." "Then what is?" Titan cut in, voice edged with irritation. "Control," Chuck replied simply. "Knowing exactly what you're capable of and applying precisely what's needed, no more, no less." The philosophical answer clearly wasn't what Titan had expected. His audience was slipping away from him, both literally as gym-goers began approaching Chuck with questions and comments, and figuratively as the live-stream comments shifted from mocking the older man to expressing awe and respect. "This isn't a TED Talk," Titan snapped, physically inserting himself between Chuck and the growing circle of admirers. "It's a gym. If you've got something to prove, prove it with iron." not fortune cookie wisdom. Chuck didn't rise to the bait. I'm not here to prove anything. Just finishing my workout before heading back to the hotel. Of course not, Titan replied, voice rising slightly. Much easier to drop in, show off a party trick, and duck out. Real athletes train consistently, not just when there's an audience. Coach Sampson stepped forward then, his weathered face stern. Watch yourself, son. You're talking to a man who was training before you were born. Titan turned on him. Stay out of this, old man. This is between me and the movie star. No, Chuck interjected quietly. It isn't between anyone. I came to train, not compete. He turned to go back to his original station, his movement suggesting the encounter was over. Something in Titan snapped the dismissal, the lost attention. The shift in the room's energy away from him and toward this quiet older man who hadn't raised his voice once. In a burst of frustration, he reached out and grabbed Chuck's shoulder. We're not done. What happened next occurred so quickly that those watching would later debate exactly what they'd seen. Chuck's hand moved in a blur, intercepting Titan's grip and redirecting it smoothly away from his body. He didn't strike or twist, just a simple, efficient redirection that nonetheless left Titan off balance, taking a stumbling step to his side. The moment was over in less than a second. Chuck hadn't assumed a fighting stance or even changed his expression. But something fundamental had shifted in the atmosphere. Titan recovered his balance quickly, face flushing with a mixture of shock and humiliation. The camera had caught it all. His graw, the blur of motion, his stumble. The live stream comments exploded. Did you see that? Not even a fight move. Just pure control. Titan just got handled. Bro didn't even try and made him look like a child. Jox's eyes were wide, his camera hand trembling slightly as he captured the aftermath. Even he, Titan's most loyal supporter, couldn't hide his stunned reaction. Titan realized in that moment that he had miscalculated badly. This wasn't just some aging celebrity trading on past fame. This was a man who had spent decades mastering his craft, whose control and precision were so ingrained they were practically reflexive. But backing down now with thousands watching would be career suicide. Nice move, he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Hollywood teaches good tricks. But this isn't a choreographed fight. This is real strength, real athletics. He gestured expansively around the gym. Choose anything, any lift, any exercise. Show us what you really bring to a training session when the cameras aren't rolling and the stunt team isn't standing by. The challenge hung in the air, impossible to dismiss without seeming to retreat. The entire gym waited for Chuck's response. The normal sounds of training completely ceased now. Even the music seemed to have been turned down, as if the building itself were holding its breath. Chuck looked at Titan for a long moment. Seeing past the bravado to the insecurity beneath, he recognized the trap of ego. He'd navigated it himself as a younger man before understanding that true confidence needed no external validation. All right, he said finally. One more exercise, but then I really do need to finish my workout. Titan's triumphant smile returned. Chuck glanced around the gym, considering his eyes settled on the bench press station where he'd first been training. There, he said, but not what you're thinking. Titan followed his gaze, already mentally calculating his max bench press and how to showcase it effectively. What then? Incline? Decline? Just the bar, Chuck replied. Titan stared at him. The empty bar 45? He laughed incredulously. What kind of challenge is that? Not about weight, Chuck explained calmly. About control, slow cadence press. For seconds up, for second hold, for seconds down. Perfect form, no shaking. As many as you can maintain with absolute precision, the crowd murmured. What seemed simple was, to those who trained seriously, known to be brutally difficult. The slow cadence with pauses eliminated momentum turned every second into a test of stabilizer muscles and mental focus. An empty bar could become torture under such conditions. Titan hesitated only briefly before his confidence reasserted itself. Fine, your funeral. I can do this all night with an empty bar. As they moved toward the bench station, the crowd following eagerly, Erica found herself beside Coach Sampson. He knows exactly what he's doing, doesn't he? she asked quietly. Samson nodded, a slight smile beneath his beard, showing the boy the difference between lifting weight and mastering it, between performing strength and embodying it. At the bench, Titan stretched theatrically, rotating his massive shoulders and making sure the camera caught his impressive wingspan. "Ready when you are, Sensei," he said, the honorific dripping with sarcasm. Chuck simply gestured to the bench. "After you, 12 repetitions should be sufficient." Titan lay back on the bench. Gripping the empty bar with hands spread wide, he glanced at Jocks. "Get my form from the side." Then he began. For the first few repetitions, Titan maintained the cadence perfectly. 4 seconds up. For seconds holding the bar at full extension. For seconds lowering it back to his chest. His face remained confident, almost bored. By the 6th repetition, tiny tremors had begun in his extended arms during the hold phase. By the 8th, sweat beaded on his forehead, his breathing,